Are you right now at a point in your life where maybe you're thinking, um, I've heard about this thing called personal transformation, but what exactly does it entail? How does one go about making sure that personal transformation happens? Right? I mean, you hear stories of other people having personal transformation, but the question is, for you, it's like, how do I experience personal transformation? So, if this is a question that's been burning in your mind right now, maybe this video that I'm creating for you, which should be maybe a couple of minutes or maybe a little longer, maybe this might help you understand more in the context of, let's call it, the dynamics of personal transformation. What do I mean by dynamics of personal transformation? To keep it simple, think of, it's like in a story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Similarly, here, when we're talking about personal transformation, let's think of it as before, during, and after. So we'll talk about the video in three, or in this video, we'll talk um, about the three aspects or the three stages, right? So let's talk about the first. But before I do that, my name is Rahul George, and I am India's premier hypnosis coach. And I'm really glad that I get to feel inspired every day to show up and create something for you, which will help you on your journey, especially if you're somebody who is a professional who right now is dealing with burnout. Burnout could be in the context of your work, burnout could be in the context of life post COVID, burnout could be in the case or in the context of maybe a relationship that you're right now dealing with. So the as you can tell, the that burnout really is what seems to be like a theme that's showing up in more than one place in your life. So if this is you, take heart, because what I'm about to share with you will probably help you on your journey to really come, not just to come to grips with, but really to be able to um, ensure that you're able to experience personal transformation. So let's go, right? So the first part, which is before you consider personal transformation, uh, let's look at three things to keep in mind. One is to make sure that you get into the habit of asking questions. What do I mean by asking questions? Rather than just being caught up in your own thoughts, start to make it a habit to frame your thoughts as questions. So, recently I had, I think it was yesterday that I had done a Facebook Live, and one of the things that I talked about was uh, make sure that you're asking this question: what do I want? So obviously, you have a lot of thoughts, but when you start to frame it in the context of what do I want, you're already channelizing your mind to start thinking in the context of answering that question. So, similarly, when you're thinking about personal transformation, and which means obviously there's a lot going on in your life right now that's not in balance, that's completely out of whack, right? In which case, when you start thinking in questions and when you start putting those questions down on paper, which means some people call it journaling. I'm keeping it very simple. Even if you just get into the habit of writing down these questions, or maybe even, especially today, because we've got our phones with us all the time. Even if you get into the habit of just recording these questions that seem to be popping up in your mind, that becomes the first part when you're talking about getting ready to ensure that you really are able to experience personal transformation. So the first is, it's like 1A is ask questions. The second thing to keep in mind is as you start to ask questions, start to notice what are some of the patterns that seem to be repeating. Because much like in math or science and even in life, uh, we are, as they say, creatures of habit, which means whether it's something good that's happening in your life or whether it's something that is making you unhappy or uneasy or unhealthy, there will always be patterns. So when you start asking questions and you start listening and you start noticing, you'll start to notice that you actually have patterns. So that's the second part, right? Which is even before you get into creating a personal transformation, the more you start to become curious, literally, like you become curious about, I wonder what this pattern, where else am I like this, right? Is it only with my friends? Is it only with, with my spouse? Is it only with my boyfriend or girlfriend? Like who, you'll start to notice that patterns will repeat in more than one place, right? Am I like this or do I behave like this even when I'm, let's say, at work, right? So the second part, like I said, was start to notice patterns. And the third is, and this is actually a tough one, right? But I'll say it anyway, right? Ask yourself this question: are you willing to do the hard stuff, right? Are you willing to do the hard stuff? Because if somewhere you can hear that voice inside you that's saying, no, I don't want to do the hard stuff, there's a possibility that you may attempt personal transformation or attempt to create personal transformation, but you will stop short. And I can tell you this not only from my own personal experience over the years, but also having worked with many, 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 many people over the years who've been going through their own, experiences. And I'm talking about like literally hundreds of people. Uh, and if I look at it over a decade, it's definitely in the thousands. Um, what's common is for those people who succeed in creating that personal transformation, they are the ones who ask this question and made that promise to themselves that that no matter what, you will, ask the hard questions and you will be open to whatever is coming up, right? So that's the first part, which is basically saying, okay, I'm preparing to be able to create personal transformation in my life. Let's now talk about the second part, right? Which is during personal transformation. What is it that's actually happening, right? You start to notice there are three things again, and I'm just simplifying this here, but there are three things that will start to change, right? One is you'll start to notice that your habits start to change, right? Whether they're good habits or whether they're bad habits, as in what you consider to be bad, these, I'll repeat that again. These habits will start to shift, they will start to change with time, provided, and like I said, before you begin personal transformation, when you've made the promise to yourself that you're going to do this, then obviously during personal transformation, one of the things that will change are your habits, right? So that's number one. Point number two, and obviously in other videos I'll go deeper into these segments. When you say habits, what exactly do you mean? And literally, like, how are habits formed, why are habits difficult to break, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the questions that maybe you might have. Please drop a note in the chat box or in the comment below, so that based on what you really want, I'll create more of these videos around it. So like I was saying, when you notice that your habits are changing, there's another thing that will also change, right? And that is what we call the identity, which means when you start saying, I am, let's say for example, maybe if earlier you considered yourself to be a workaholic. And so you said, so who are you? You would say, I'm a workaholic, right? And maybe now you're starting to notice that you're uh, using new language, like you're saying, maybe I'm a minimalist, or maybe I'm an essentialist. Like, these are movements, these are ways of being that people have been discovering. And of course, it's not something new. It's been around for centuries, if you ask me. But in popular culture, these are some of the frames, these are some of uh, the ways of describing the kind of person that you are. These are some of the things that you'll start to listen to, you'll start to see, and you'll also notice this in your own social media feed, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, any whichever one that you use, or even LinkedIn for that matter. The point is that you will start to notice that the way you identify yourself will start to shift, right? And so when that happens, there's one very, very important thing to keep in mind. And that's the third part of what happens when you're deep in the process of creating personal transformation. And that is, your environment will change, right? And what do I mean by that? The kind of things that you do in a day, the kind of media that you consume in a day, the kind of people that you surround yourself with, the kind of people that will start to kind of drop off from your social radar. This will happen, right? And it's not just me saying it. I've experienced it and I've seen it happen in the lives of many, many people. Because remember, here's the thing. Because you already made that commitment to saying, yes, I want to change the way I am as a person, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, because I can't go on anymore being in this state of feeling burnt out, being in this state of feeling helpless, being in this state of feeling like you're on a hamster wheel, and no matter what you do, you keep coming back to making the quote unquote the same mistakes, right? So this is that part where you'll start to notice that, like, even who you are now versus 6 months ago, there's quite a remarkable difference, right? So that's the second part, which is while you're in the process of experiencing personal transformation. And last but not the least is what happens after personal transformation. Now, I've kind of like kept it a little tongue in cheek, because quite honestly, if you consider yourself to be a learning, as they say, like a learning machine, which means you're constantly evolving, I have good news and bad news for you. The bad news is that, you'll never stop, right? And the good news also is that you'll never stop, which means now that you've chosen to tap into and to tune into this way of being, this is going to be with you literally for the rest of your life, right? So, and again, remember, it's a choice, because if you decided to make that shift in your life for the wrong reasons, then it'll sort of become like a fad, like it's like how people used to talk about losing weight, or learning a hobby or whatever. Like, those were just things that we did on the spur of the moment for a little bit of time. Or it's like the New Year's coming up pretty soon, and it's like people say, okay, from this point on I'm going to change. Those tend to be very sort of knee-jerk reactions. On the other hand, if you're truly looking at personal transformation, and which means you're wanting to make this into a lifestyle, that also means that it's literally, as cliched as it sounds, it's literally how you're styling the way you live your life, right? The way you're designing how you live your life. So if you really think about it, it's just two phases, right? It's what you do before, and it's what you do literally for the rest of your life. So at this point, I'm just going to take a moment, just a brief pause, and one is, of course, if you got to this point of the video, you are truly a champion, because you're already on your way, right? There are a lot of people that may have initially clicked for whatever reasons, and would have dropped off. Life can take over, or people can be in a state of distraction. But you're here, which means you're probably already somewhere moving between the before more into really making personal transformation part of your life and part of who you are. So kudos to you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing especially the questions that you might have in this regard, because I've been styling this part of living for, I would say now, close to about 15 16 years. So I can definitely tell you that I know a thing or two, or a little bit more, and I'd love to share with you in a way where what I'm sharing with you is in service of you, right? Because this is not my story. This is not about me sort of like blowing my own trumpet, right? So the more questions that you ask, the more questions that you leave in the comment. And of course, if you're watching this video or one version of this video on YouTube, please leave a comment below, because that's how AI, that's how technology works. The more interactions that there are, the more people get to see this, right? Because I'm sure there are other people that that could benefit from what you've heard so far, right? So I want to thank you again for coming along on the ride, and if there's any way in which I can help you, I'd be more than willing to. So leave your comments below. Share, maybe share. Which stage are you in right now? Are you in the like the prep stage of creating personal transformation, or do you believe you're, based on what we've talked about so far, what I've shared with you so far? Do you believe you're more sort of now starting to experience personal transformation? Okay? So that's one way that I'll know that you literally watched the video all the way to the end. So thank you once again for sticking around, listening, and I will see you again in another video or a post or some platform, maybe live. And so this is me, Rahul George, signing off, and I will see you again soon. Take care.